And we're live with his Jeffness and son of Jeff to review an episode of Homicide. Over to you, Jeff.
And I'm already letting Ben off the hook, continuing the conversation we were having off air, because really Something Sacred actually aired all as one episode. They split it into a two-parter for like DVD and stuff, but it actually aired as one like movie episode on the night of 1998. But for purposes of this review, since we already were doing back-to-back anyway, I didn't even suggest that we watch both parts of it this week. But yes, this is Homicide Season 6, Episode 12, entitled Something Sacred. And this is, obviously, Part 1 of that. And it aired January 30th, 1998 on NBC. It was, written by David Simon and Anya Epstein and directed by Yuli Adele. And I'm going to go to straight
what some scrub has to say about it?
Yes, what some scrub has to say about it. David B226 Scrub Morris.
Yes, he is a scrub.
And he says, 2 weeks after the announcement that Homicide would be back for a 7th season, the producer tried something that they hadn't done before. Never do again. They aired both hours of a 2-part episode together in order to make a homicide movie centered around a single investigation. The episode was titled Something Sacred, a satire of Nothing Sacred, a critically acclaimed but little-watched ABC drama that dealt with the life and service of a priest.
So you're going to have to stop halfway through this review for the first part?
I don't know, because I don't know if he wrote them as one thing or not.
Didn't read.
He did write that with the Law and Order crossover, so we'll see. Anyway, I'll stop if he keeps going. Anyway, the pastiche was fitting considering the center of the episode, a murder of a priest. I'd just like to point out that I have no actual knowledge that it was a satire of the Nothing Sacred title. And I don't know that Mr. Morris does either. But anyway.
He's making it up. He's making it up.
Ballard and Gardy get called out to a Baltimore parish where they find a middle-aged priest tied up, beaten with a blunt object, and finally stabbed to death. It appears that the rector was the victim of some kind of robbery, and the initial suspects are 2 Guatemalan refugees, both teenagers, who the priest took in and watched. Initially, the refugees are nowhere to be found. What we mainly find in this part of the storyline is a lot of false leads that go nowhere. A poem in Spanish about a God of love, forgive, forgive, is found written on a blackboard near the priest's body. It isn't a message from the killer. The priest wrote it out when he tried to give a lesson in Spanish. A few hours later, the news receives a tape from a Swami claiming that the good father was responsible for the sexual molestation of a dozen young boys, including the 2 refugees. Turns out not only are the charges false, but the Swami isn't even a real religious leader who has apparently chosen to smudge the good name of a colleague from a seminary they both studied in. The tip line is set up in an effort to find the killers, results in a tip involving a suspicious robbery attempt, which leads to the pickup of a young black kid named Rock, who in the end can't be identified.
Oh, Rock.
Finally, the refugees seem almost certainly to be the killers, and this seems more than likely a day later when another priest is found dead outside his rectory and the refugees have jumped bail. The similarities between this investigation and the Annabella Wilgus murders in Season 3 are easy to see. There are 2 distinct differences. First, this is clearly not the action of a serial killer. Second, religion is not at the center of the murders, robbery is. More importantly is the issue of faith. This time, however, the Catholic at the center of the murders is not Pembleton, but Stu Gardy. From the start, it is clear he has some real problems with what has happened to the victim and the charges that he molested young boys. Considering the number of charges that have come in the years since this episode aired, it's astounding that Epstein didn't make the charges legitimate. It is clear that this hurts him immensely, for unlike Pembleton, he is a loyal Catholic, one who still believes in the church. This is the first time since Gardy first appeared on the show that we get a look at his psyche, and Gardy plays it well. Though the focus is mostly on the case at hand, there's a lot of other business going on during this episode. For starters, Stivers has been rotated into the homicide unit. Then there's the fact that no one has seen Meldrick since his suspension, something that has Kellerman very concerned. He has called his wife, his mother, and checked everywhere, but he can't find him, which causes Mike to fear Georgia Ray has taken some kind of action. His concern that Stivers has come to replace Lewis, combined with his fear that she is the weak link in Luther's shooting, probably accounts for his open hostility towards her. And the fact that Falzone is on his case and Mike is running out of friends in the unit. Finally, Falzone's custody hearing has begun, and even at this early stage, it's not going to go that well. Aside from the continued absence of Clark Johnson and Kyle Secor, Bayless is on vacation. The first part of Something Sacred is a pretty good mix of the old and new Homicide. In addition to Garrity, Kelly Thorne continues to show good form, particularly in 2 scenes, one with Gardy, one with Pimbleton, where she discusses faith and her lack of it. The Priests Are Murdered has a more realistic feel than some elements of the Wilgus murders, and the exploration of these Central American refugees is an interesting one, especially looking back from the post-9/11 views about immigration. Yet the character development is not quite as good as it has been in some of the episodes, and it seems a little underdone. Perhaps it's because there is so much unresolved, but since we don't have to wait long for resolution, we can let that go for this one. My score, 8.2. So that's a somewhat all over the place review, but anyway, Ben, what do you have to say? Even though your picture has nothing to do with Homicide.
Little runway.
That's what it looked like, yeah.
Better if I put my mic on.
Tank, man.
Yeah, I thought the acting was very good from Garty, the actor playing Garty. Can you hear me?
This one.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Right, yes. I thought the acting was... I need to go to the... see where I am with the... my eyes have been dazzled by the... with the... I have to sort of know where I am with all these images. It's easy if I can... It helps me to recap by going to the beginning and thinking of the images.
But you're the one controlling the images.
Yes. Yeah, it's because what happens is I've got the images going round, and then I'm listening to David B226 Morris, and he gets on my nerves sometimes with like his agenda. Because he sometimes
in that one, his agenda was apparently just to speak in bad grammar.
Yeah, been like adding things like when he was talking about like adding things about post 9/11 and all these things like that, and
He didn't really add all these things.
I didn't really think that was an agenda. He was just stating. He just said something like it's interesting considering views on immigration or whatever.
So yeah, I agree that part was dumb, but some people say stupid stuff all the time. Man. It wasn't much of an agenda.
I mean, what do you think his agenda was?
He was trying to frame Bush for 9/11 again.
right.
We all know it. He's the mastermind.
So it's the sort of like the concentration on Garty was good. Very very good scene between Pembleton and Seattle.
I thought Seattle sounded a little unnatural in that one too, but she did better than Cox would have. She still sounded on character. She just sounded more like her character had possibly said some of those things in a mirror beforehand.
Is it realistic that a cop from Seattle is that naive? I mean, is Seattle really?
Is Seattle really that?
I don't know. Having never been to Seattle, I don't really know. I know the image is obviously quite different than Baltimore.
Yeah, well, did they say what kind of cop she was? Because you can be if you're like a patrol cop, I mean, you don't have to face the things that homicide
It is implied, yeah. I think it was said that she was a detective before she got to Baltimore, but she may not have been in homicide.
Then, like the homicide unit at times, especially in the beginning of the show, made mention of the fact that they are different than the rest of the units, including all the other detectives, because while the other detectives have, people get shot and stuff during robberies and other things, the homicide unit has to actually deal with those things and talk to the parents and or loved ones or whatever and all those things. So they have a different outlook on how that stuff works. So it's understandable that she, if not being a homicide detective before, has a different has to get used to some things. But really, they're just using her kind of as a scapegoat because Bayless has already been in the homicide unit long enough, and he's not shown as much. So they can't use him.
I said that a
to be the
couple of
naive one.
episodes ago that they sort of have her in some way. She takes the place of Bayless as being the has to have stuff explained to her because Bayless has been around long enough where can't get away with it anymore.
Do you think it's believable that they would transfer in someone who was relatively inexperienced?
Yes, for a couple of reasons. One, because G was portrayed as always wanting more detectives, regardless. Like he pretty much thinks more bodies is a good thing. But two is apparently she was known for just having really good detective skills, and so somebody can be inexperienced but still have obvious raw skills that they display. And so somebody says, okay, I like it's just like somebody recruiting for sports. Like this athlete is not experienced and has a lot to learn, but they have this raw skill that I want to utilize, so I want them on my team. It's kind of the thing with Balor.
Right. Okay. Let me think about this. This was a little bit of a digression. This guy
himself, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, because it's like once it's been found out that he's not really relevant to the plot afterwards. I mean, it was initially quite interesting, thinking, oh, what's going on here? Is there like a connection to a cult kind of thing? But then that suddenly just gets revealed to be just a bit of a guy on the make.
Again, kind of back to what we were saying in the last review, though, that it adds to the realism of the fact that detectives really do pursue a lot of dead ends, often in cases where, anytime somebody claims they have information about something, they have to pursue it in case, in case that it does have merit, but a lot of times it doesn't. We had the case a while back, where G ended up shooting the guy, where the one dude was trying to play a prank on him by saying he was the one that killed somebody else. And, that may not happen a whole lot, but you do have people claim, either to throw suspicion off themselves or whatever reason, they try to sort of suggest it could be somebody that they don't really have any evidence against. And cops have to pursue that just in case there's merit to it, and a lot of times there isn't.
I'm surprised.
To throw suspicion off themselves.
I'm surprised that there's not been a scene between more of G going after Kellerman about the Mahoney thing, and like say things about that, about put a bit more pressure on him to because surely he would have the experience to know that maybe it wasn't a clean shooting.
Put pressure on.
You mean
Kellerman to do what?
You mean initially, like right after it happened?
Well, no, it's just like it just like has that one talk with him. And it's like, so, like, did it go down the way you said? And then he's like, not asked him about it.
Yeah, I'll get back to that. But put pressure on him to do what?
Just maybe if he thought that he wasn't telling the truth.
Well, honestly, the way I interpret it is G didn't want to know.
Yeah.
The way he looked at it was, if there's anything wrong with this, I don't want to know about it because I just want it to be over with. But he did, It's like if there's a problem, I know so I can deal with it. But if you're telling me, like, I don't think he expected that it had to be 100% accurate the way that they described it. But he wanted to know if there was something that was going to get him in hot water or something. That's the way
yeah, and he does protect his officers.
Yeah, you were having trouble coming up with the reason or what he was trying to get Kellerman to do. It's because that's stemming off, some weird end thing you're doing. G's ESTJ. He's straightforward. He wants something to happen and then move on and go to the next thing and close the case. So the thing he did is he asked him. He's like, okay, straight answer. Is this how it happened? He got his answer, and so he wants to
But it's that
he wants
thing
to back up his people. So he's like, okay, you're telling me it's like this. All right, I'm taking your word for it. And now we're moving on to the things that we actually need to get done around here. So that's all
Getting back to this episode, since there wasn't anything really about that in this one, I just want to say I was surprised. I think, not surprised, but I think if the case had been somebody besides Ballard and Gardy talking to the Swami, like there's other detectives that would have come much more hardcore at him, like trying to kind of throw him, are you a suspect? you know, and you're trying to make this other stuff to throw it all suspicion off of you, because they don't even really bring that up at all, of the possibility of him being the killer, and coming up with this other thing to try to distract them. And I think Lewis, Kellerman, Pimbleton, Munch, like all those guys, Felton, like a lot of they would have been more on that guy. As it is, they just, as it is, you know, Gardy is kind of annoyed at him, but he just sort of like dismisses him as, okay, you're just some quack guy, you know.
He just really doesn't like him.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to deal with him anymore.
He's just like, you know, he's pissed off at the guy, but he doesn't even really throw any suspicion on him. And neither is Ballard, because it's just her approach is not ever to really get in anybody's face about anything. So
yeah, I don't know how she gets her job.
Well, I mean, and that again, there are some detectives that are like that. Not all of them are in-your-face type people.
Sometimes you got in somebody's face.
But yeah, sometimes you do. And
she doesn't do
that guy, apparently, they both, you know, were, you know, at least didn't think it was worth it. But I just think some of the other detectives in the same situation probably would come after him harder after that. It's just kind of what I'm thinking.
Oh, well, the other detectives are better. So.
In some ways, yes.
It seemed to be in the scene where Garty was getting upset that something later will be revealed. Am I right in thinking that, Jeff?
You mean about him?
No, he was getting. He had like a little bit of a speech about the good that the Catholic Church does, or that particular priest, and not wanting to investigate him.
Right.
And then others were saying it's a Catholic thing, and then him saying, "No, you don't understand," as if.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but you haven't seen the second episode yet.
I mean, you're saying you think that, you know, as far as like the abuse angle, that there would be something?
Yeah, then maybe there's more to come that will be revealed by Garrity.
I mean, the way, yeah, it could go that way in terms of him defending the church or priest or whatever. You know, you could say it could be denial if he had an experience like that. But on the other hand, I just, you know, I kind of look at it at face value that he's trying to say that when those happen, they're isolated incidents, and it's not a thing that's typical of Catholic priests.
Or maybe or maybe I was thinking that maybe in the past he had been accused of it falsely, of that and things like that.
I don't know.
It's just possibilities.
He became a priest, so
yeah.
But
you have to be a priest in the lesbian life.
yeah. Well, on that pleasant topic, moving on.
Moving on to, I was not super interested in this episode.
He made comments while watching, because we watched it again last night.
I don't know why you're saying that again.
Because
I had to repeat some of those comments so I can remember them, and none of them were comments about how interesting it was.
No, it wasn't. He was annoyed by the nun/lawyer character.
Yeah, she was annoying. I mean, she wasn't annoying at first. She was just annoying when she became the lawyer. And then it was like, suddenly she's like getting in everybody's face and like making sassy comments for no reason.
Yeah.
Like
acting differently, like a
and
different
what I
character.
said at the time was she was lawyering, because lawyers act like that. That's what they do.
Like, nobody did anything to her, and yet she's supposed to be this nun. I don't know. Maybe she's trying to throw the nun thing away. Like, not only am I a nun, I'm also a sassy lawyer. I don't know.
There's sassy nuns.
I don't know what it is, but. Well, right, but I mean, they might not be being called a nun. They might have some, you know, stigma where it's like, okay, yeah, and then they all have to all act this way, and so she's trying to like throw that back in their face. But regardless,
it's not like she started telling them to go to hell or anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's no sense for her behavior. It was just dumb and annoying. And, I didn't care about any of the priests. I didn't care about the two Guatemalan. They were Guatemalan.
Yeah.
I didn't care about the two Guatemalan kids. They were uninteresting. I actually did like the interviews with them when because they acted like decently. That was one of the few parts. There's a whole lot of chatter about them.
I like MTV.
Yeah.
Which kids, if you're watching back in the '90s when the Homicide was on, the MTV still showed music videos. Not all the time, but that was still the focus of the channel. So
anyway, back to things that matter. Like this show that no one watches.
Or this review.
You mean the review that no one watches? Because the show was some people watched.
Yeah. Well, anyway, well, this show.
In fact, it was the #1 rated show in Baltimore.
Well, yeah, because it was freaking Baltimore, and it was a decent show.
People would watch the show to see if their neighborhood was going to be on this week's Homicide.
Hey, is that my house? No, it's not. Anyway, shut up.
Man.
See, like, I was talking real quick about everything I thought sucked about the episode, real quick off the list. I can pass it on to you to say something you cared about, and then now I don't remember what I was talking about. And I've wasted all of that time, and you've wasted all that time, too.
Is Bayless really on vacation, or is he the killer?
I hope he is, jeez. I hope he gets shot in the next episode.
Do you think that G is hot for the nun because he was looking through the blind after she left?
I didn't look like a he's hot for her look.
Is that what happened?
It was more of a suspicious look or a concerned look, I think.
Yeah. I only remember 1 or 2 times where he was like, where the joke was that he was with some chick. Or like
I mean, he didn't look like he was checking out her butt or anything.
Yeah, that's not what it looked like. He looks through stuff all the time. He's always busy. He's always doing something. Looking at this person and talking to this person. What about it? See, Ben just wants to see everything as some lewd act. Everyone's trying to get busy with somebody.
No, it's just that they've had things with him before with G.
Well, Ballard, I mean, you say we talked about her inexperience, but she had a little bit of an initiation in this episode because she had her first confrontation with Barnfather. We've had several other detectives that have had little mini showdowns with him, and so in this one it was Ballard's turn
to say some stuff and then get told off.
Yeah,
That's basically all that happened.
Yeah. She didn't call him a butthead like Bayless did.
Yeah, which is a very SJ-ish or tame kind of thing.
Okay. You're calling all SJs tame. All right.
No. What I mean
is, G's tame, huh? You want to be in the box with him?
No. What it was is I was going with that angle of it sounded a bit tame. Then I realised that they had to tone the language down because it was network television.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that
definitely.
Bayless
there would be way more cussing on the show if it was realistic.
Bayless would probably not. I mean, that's the thing is his character might have said that anyway, but it probably would have been a little bit less goofy sounding. But Morgan reminded me because he said, "Would you want to be in the box with G?" And it just made me think of that episode where the guy's recording his confessions or whatever, and G is just staring at him, and he goes, "Does he have to be here?"
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Because he just has this death stare the entire time at him, and he never changes his look.
Yeah, you don't want to have that guy staring at you.
That was the guy who was, testifying. It was a stakeout episode, because he was talking about how it was his job to find dudes to come back and be raped and killed by that older guy.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. So G's just, death staring him the whole time. Because the kid was acting all casual about it, like this was just a hobby they had, and so he's just giving him this stare,
he hated that guy.
Yeah. But boy, he just goes, "Does he have to be here?" Yeah. Anyway, back to something sacred. I thought that as far as the pacing of it goes, it went by really fast. It seemed like I can understand how they were able to make a 2-hour episode basically out of this, because
I definitely understand how they made a 2-hour episode out of this, because the first one didn't make any sense. It was setting a bunch of stuff up.
I mean, I think it made sense, but
well, I mean, yeah, but it's there's a bunch of just stuff that happened, and then they just kind of left it alone.
But I agree with Morris making reference to the Wilgus murders, which is back at the beginning of season 3, because it was similar in that you had something start out as it's one murder, and then you have the end of the episode, somebody else gets killed. That's exactly what happened in those stories. So it starts to make the audience go, "Oh, they're going to do that again and have another priest killed in the next episode." Well, and Ben will just have to find out.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Obviously, I already know, but one brief spoiler I'll say for the second part, because it doesn't really doesn't give away anything about who the killer is, but you get to see Munch dressed as a priest. I'll just say that in advance.
Oh.
There's a little bit of undercover work,
I don't know why you want to spoil anything. But anyway.
Well, because I just think it's a good teaser for.
Yeah, he's just trying to entice me to just watch it sooner.
You and him who watch this video.
Because there's episodes like the aforementioned stakeout episode I mentioned where Pimbleton says something like, "I don't want to see Munch in shorts or whatever," because they were talking about what Bayless asked him why I don't hang out and like play sports together or things like that. And so I would like to take the opportunity to point out you don't see Munch in shorts, but get him dressed as a priest, so which is kind of fun.
Anyway, this episode was lame. It was messy. I didn't like which was realistic. I'm not saying it was unrealistic. I'm saying I wouldn't be interested in it. I wasn't interested in the nun chick, who was also a lawyer. I wasn't interested in the Guatemalan kids, except when they're actually doing the interview. When they're actually doing something that seemed like they were trying to get somewhere, when they're actually doing the interviews, I like that part.
Could you repeat, though, what you said before we were on the air about Munch? Because you had some complimentary things to say about him.
I said Munch was cool. I said Munch seemed like he was believable as a homicide detective.
Yeah, well, in this episode, he got to be the action guy because he's the one.
Oh yeah, I missed that part.
That takes down.
When I was coming back into the room, I heard the chase music, and I was like, "Hey, there's a chase going on."
I forgot to say that in the last review that they played the Getaway music when they were chasing the hillbillies.
Yeah, I loved that one. It was great.
But yeah, they in this one they have and Kellerman's a little bit too. I
still like a lot of the music choices in this show.
Yeah, they were better in this episode than in previous seasons.
Kellerman gets a little bit. He's a little bit too cop looking or some tough guy looking. Where when he's coming at them, they run away. Munch is a little bit less.
Munch is unassuming dude and who exists.
Like Munch, you don't really think of this guy is going to be a problem.
He's dangerous, yeah, but then he grabs
the one that pulls the gun out.
Suckers. But yeah, uninteresting. Maybe the second episode would be better. I don't remember the second episode, which might mean that I also found out uninteresting.
Again, with the kind of red ball aspect of the case, you saw you bring in the media angle, so you see what the television reports are saying about it. Added kind of effect in the episode.
Yeah, I liked Guardy again in this one. Guardy in general, I tried to like him, even though he was one of the newer detectives. Because even while he said some things I didn't agree with sometimes, he always, a lot of the times he had some sort of basis for what he's talking about. He's talking from experience. He's at least trying to reason on some sort of level where it's, from experience. Even if he's wrong about whatever it is, it just means he came to the wrong conclusion. He's still I still respect him a little bit for a lot of the things he says and does, except he's a coward, but, we've already been over that since before he was a detective here.
It's not that cowardly. It's just relatively cowardly.
Oh, he was at that one instance. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but there'll be further evidence that he's not a coward coming up later in the show. But.
Anyway, enough of the fortune teller Jeff going on about what's going to happen in the future. I liked Guardy again in this one.
I consulted the Swami. Sorry.
The Swami, yeah. Yeah, seeing the Swami, he was boring. But that was one of the things that they just kind of left afterwards, which I don't remember if they come back to in the second episode. So I can't spoil you. I don't remember the second episode. But they just kind of left that alone after they talked to him. They didn't have anything come out of that. Dude, when they brought Rock, who was the most interesting character in this episode, with his 3 lines or whatever, to the dude to have him identified or whatever, that didn't go anywhere. Which I'm guessing that they'll revisit something that they left to the second episode. I'm guessing they'll do something in the second episode with any of the things that they just left alone in the first one. But in the first one, it seems like they go out, they do something, nothing happens. They go out, they do something else, nothing happens. They go do some random thing, nothing happens. They talk a lot.
That's how it was the David Simon episode, because he always was the one focusing on the fact that most police work is boring,
being extremely realistic and showing that nothing happens. Yeah, everything's uninteresting.
To discuss that on DVD, how Tom Fontana, as the TV producer, was the one saying, "Okay, but we had to do something a little more exciting
to actually make this interesting in any way." Yeah,
David
this
Simon
one
was next 30 minutes should be somebody doing paperwork.
Yeah, that's police work for you.
because
yeah,
they spend very
uninteresting.
little time on the show showing them doing paperwork, which they spend a lot of time in real life doing.
Well, a lot of times where this will leave that aspect in there where they like have the actual conversation that they're focusing on and people doing paperwork in the background.
Right.
They don't like completely skip over that to where it's like all the detectives like sitting in a room
Yeah.
talking to each other at all times.
Yeah, it's not Hunter where it's nonstop action detective.
Yeah, it's not that stupid.
Even in NYPD Blue, where like all the squad shows up to every murder scene, like doesn't happen.
Ridiculous.
And it's one thing if the mayor's shot, but even then, you probably wouldn't have the whole squad go out. In fact, they would want to get everybody away from.
But on that one, they might actually have an actual detective show up. Unlike a lot of these murders where detectives really wouldn't show up.
They would
have patrol people do it.
Yeah, and the bigger cities, often detectives are not especially not multiple detectives showing up at the scene.
But yeah, I understand in some small town place where the detective's also the sheriff, and
yeah,
he also is the or something.
In the heat of the night, in part of Mississippi, where they the chief of detectives is the only detective.
Yeah, they didn't have any detectives. They were just the cops who detective work because they were cops to some extent. Anyway,
they really should have then because they have a murder like every week.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's because they have
very
high,
very high.
But anyway, back to this show that we're reviewing that no one cares about, and how this episode was boring. Are we done with talking about how boring this episode was?
Are you?
Well, I mean, do you have anything to say other than how boring this
episode
was? Well, go for it.
Okay, if you're
done. Wasting time on. Hurry up.
I think that they did a good job of the suspense in the episode because there's not like a really predictable way that they're going with it when it comes to the next.
Yeah, it looks like they're going nowhere.
Yeah, it's like, okay, do we, like what's his face said, Morris, is it a serial killer? But if
he said it wasn't,
but then I don't think they really discussed when the second priest was killed because there wasn't enough episode of the episode left to talk about whether that was a robbery too. Morris implied that it was, but I don't know if that was actually revealed in that. Anyway, but there's that question. It was one of the people they've introduced, not actually a dead end if they pursue it with one of the, obviously they set it up where you think, well, it's set up to look like the Guatemalans could have done it because they ran off again, but they ran off the first time because they thought people were going to think they did it, so they could have run off for the same reason, or or does the nun really know that they really left and she's just doing an acting job, pretending she didn't know that?
She do it herself.
Yeah, did she tell them to leave, arrange it, or
because she's annoying?
So
she's probably the killer.
Is Rock going to listen to nothing but Public Enemy, or does he have other groups that he likes to listen to? I mean, is Ballard going to is Gardy going to convert Ballard to Catholicism? There's many questions that have been brought up.
Is Rock going to convert the detectives to rap?
Is Hamilton going to make more pronouncements? That was another thing you said. We discussed that briefly. Was Pemberton kind of saying these things that don't really go anywhere?
Oh, was I saying the part where he said a bunch of stuff that contradicted itself, but it made sense?
Yeah, because he said that that Ballard was lucky for not having faith.
Like if you go line by line, he just sounds like he makes this really profound statement. But if you look back at previous lines of the same thing he was talking about, he has been contradicting himself since the beginning.
Right, because it's not about him actually
he's just making an impact.
Right.
He's not trying to make sense.
Exactly. It goes back to the personality of the character, because you're like, he's not actually trying to convince her of anything. He's still performing. He's just kind of like, here's this opportunity to say some stuff and be dramatic with it. And like I say my thing, and then I drive off as I can. I'm cool like that,
But
and he looks so suave.
And it made sense in the situation in that he was doing it to make her feel better.
I don't know about all
somewhat. That. I mean, he is a compassionate person, so I think there's part of that. And he was also
a decent response to her kind of spilling the guts to him.
I think even though they don't specifically mention it, that there's a little bit of that from the first, case that was Pimbleton's case, where they worked together and he was hard on Ballard for interfering with his investigation the way he wanted to run it. Then when he said the part about, work this the way you want to, I think he was kind of trying to remind her, look, that's my attitude about my cases. It's the same thing with yours. I'm not going to try to get in your way because you're the primary. So this is what you got to trust your own instincts and do it your way. So I think he was trying to be reassuring, but he was in his usual, kind of over dramatic way of saying it.
I remember that when she was asking for advice about how to deal with Pendleton. I think that was in one of her first few episodes.
That first 3-part story at the beginning of this season.
Which?
Blood Ties was the name of the episode.
Well, Ben, do you have something wonderful to say about this episode?
Ben?
I think this episode had... Anyway, I like the storyline with Garty's reaction to it.
Less of a storyline and more of a scene or two.
Yes. I've got to work with something now. I've got to try and thread it together and find. But there was quite a bit of padding in it. Like the guy that was the false lead.
The Swami dude?
Yeah. But it was okay.
But the Swami sees all and knows all.
It was okay.
Well, he had to have the one funny line where they asked him to take a lie detector test, and he said it was against his religion.
It's against his religion.
Because if you create your own religion, you can say anything's against it. No, me being honest with you is against my religion.
Putting onions on pizza is against my religion.
Yeah, putting onions on anything is against my religion.
You know it.
Against my temperament, sorry, I mean my religion.
Yeah.
So that's all Ben has to say about it. Putting the spotlight back on someone else since he doesn't want to be involved. This episode was boring. There we go.
Well, we got that you thought
but
it was boring.
But it set up a lot of things that will possibly be resolved and or explored in the second episode.
Right.
That I don't remember.
Well, because we don't have you join much for these hangouts. Which episodes? What do you find interesting in these stories? What makes an interesting homicide story to you?
Things that actually happen. Nothing happened in this episode. There was hardly any action. There was hardly any even just like movement forwards in the case. So they're just kind of wandering around saying stuff to each other. Which in of itself isn't interesting to me. I understand it's a drama show, so some of that had drama, but it's hard to find drama when nothing really happens that much. So the big things that happen are they catch the kids, who they think did it. They question the kids, which I liked the scenes where they question the kids. Even I liked the scene I missed where they caught the kids. And then the one where they find that they're not there after someone else was killed. Those are the 3 main real things that happen in this episode. 2 things are leads that don't go anywhere in the first episode. But the 3 main things that happen are the interesting points in the episode. I didn't really care about the last part, but that was because I was bored by the rest of it.
Oh, and we find out how much Falzone makes a year as a cop.
And that subplot, that was all boring and interesting. I don't care about Falzone's life, but they're trying to tell you about his life anyway.
The dueling lawyers thing, I did like it, when the guy had asked him about like partners and stuff, that his lawyer comes back with the, your boyfriend, is that the same one who had a DWI last year? It's
yeah.
like,
I liked the lawyers, but they're just using it as another excuse to try to be like, oh, hey, this new character, let's tell you about him, and I don't care about him.
I mean,
So.
See that aspect of it.
But yeah, I don't care about him. I don't care about his wife, ex-wife, whatever the hell.
She's kind of cute.
I don't care about her. Yeah, all that stuff's not interesting to me. But I liked him better dealing with that other kid that wasn't his.
Yeah.
Because that was like seemingly have to do with the actual episode, and he was more amusing.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then Anyway, so the second episode will probably explore at least one of the dead ends from the first one, if not both, and find possibly some new connection with them. Hopefully Rock returns to play some more music and say some more great lines like, nice dress. And hopefully, yeah, that's it from me. I mean, this episode's boring. I give it a out of 17 million.
You want to go to the scores, Ben, or do you have something else to say about it?
Yeah, I think I'll give it about a 7. Yeah.
I'll say 8 because I thought about 7. I kind of waffle between those, but I'll go with 8 just because I thought it was well paced and kind of suspenseful, and that you don't really know where it's going, which is a good thing. So, all right, so that'll be an average of 7.5. And join us next time for Munch as a Priest. I mean, Something Sacred Part 2.
Munch as a Priest would be a better title.
Bye bye.